sensational. But welcome everyone in the place. It is your boy Goodman Daps with my brothers Goodman Quest, Goodman Manny. Welcome to the one and only Goodman Factory.
That's right.
Podcast experience. You know the vibes. Hey yo, but yeah, obviously, before we even just get started, obviously to the wider public who may not know, just want to give a big shout out and congratulations to our bros in play, Goodman Manny, who has just now officially become assistant head teacher at his school.
Thank you.
So
That's
please,
what I'm talking about.
everyone, please, whenever you see him, just
DJ hit the bomb.
yeah, just hit the. I need these things. You understand? You know that Joe Budden was like, bam, bam, bam. That's what I'm gonna start doing from now on. Goodman Malik, you've had my request. You got to start get those sound effects in.
Dropping some bombs. No, thank you, man.
No, for real. For real. How was the process just in terms of actually making that happen? Was it like some mad convoluted process? Was it fairly straightforward for you?
No, wasn't straightforward. The actual, and I'm not even going to talk about this for too long.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be for another day, but the actual process to get the job, I got the job on Friday. I was told anyway, I got the job on Friday. The interview process was a 2-day interview process.
Oh, wow.
8:30 till about 4:15 on Wednesday. And then it was another process again. Thursday, I was there from about 12:30 till again about 4:15. So the process by no means was easy, but it was definitely worth it. And I think everything I've done up until this point within my career, I think prepared me for that particular moment. So yeah, man. Listen, I give God the praise as always. Thank you, my family. Thank God, Goodman Malik, my people, them, everybody. Yeah, because it literally is it's a result of all the investment that's been put into me, but as well as hard work and faith. So yeah, thank you, man. Love it.
Obviously, we always love to hear positive news, especially things that obviously actively and positively affect, A, the black community, and B, obviously for, young black men. We always love to speak about representation and having these things that matter. And obviously having individuals like that occupy a space in education, quite a prominent space in education as well, that we don't often see, black men, also young black men typically kind of, hold as a post. That's a big thing. It's a big deal. And it's definitely, the type of things that we always actively encourage and stuff that should always be celebrated and, made known to the people that, there are movements being made, things are coming into play. And also at the end of the day, I think beyond all else, it also highlights to anybody who may see, who may think to themselves, oh, do I really want to get involved in education? And, what impact can I potentially have? Literally, the examples right here. You've got Goodman Manny right here, who's literally done all the graft and done the work to make that happen. And, and that in itself is really, really a big, big plus. First and foremost, the main thing here is just to obviously once again welcome everyone back. As you know, we've been on a major hiatus as a whole, obviously due to Korokoro and the Panorama and the Bakromo and and everything else. So obviously that's really, really been, holding, kind of having a lot of things on hold. Season 1 came through, season 2 live and direct. So, we're absolutely happy and chuffed to be back in the studio, recording, making great content that has a positive impact on our listeners. And of course, just also being able to just talk our shit and have a whole load of healthy banter too. And I think, it's great to be able to be back in that space. Just to also give a big shout out to, Goodman Malik as well as Goodman Rizzy for obviously investing in other projects besides the podcast. So just also give a big shout out to, obviously I know he's not here with us right now, but Goodman Mike as well in terms of his own show that he's got going, Safe Space. So please, keep a lookout for that as well.
Yeah, good stuff.
Definitely going to be on YouTube. And obviously you'll be seeing from on Insta and of course on all of our social media profiles. So please don't hesitate to, to reach out to us as well. Also very, very big shout out once again to just, our listeners. Without, at the end of the day, without our listeners, we really would be nothing. Mm-hmm. We can talk all this, give all the gems, talk all this shit. But if you guys aren't listening and giving us the relevant feedback and showing us love, then, there's not really much point. And at the end of the day, you guys are the core, of what we do. And, you know, it's always just good and taking the time to always show that appreciation all the same. So not really gonna, you know, talk too much on that. Obviously as well, products as well have obviously been selling strong. So I always have regular conversations with Malik and Rizzy about this. And we're also really glad to see that, you know, the products are speaking for themselves, because we're seeing it. We're seeing more subscriptions. We're seeing more orders. We're seeing more people on social media talking about, oh yeah, the face oil, and speaking about the beard oil and so on and so forth. So that's great to see also. At the end of the day, we're here, we're back. We want to talk about obviously a good, relevant topic. And I think it's something that we speak on it amongst our friendship circles, but I don't really think we speak on it with much nuance when we speak in those circles. And it's essentially about the aspects of, you know, brotherhood, but more specifically dealing with, let's say, what is kind of termed as a bromance. And to just kind of deal with an overarching topic of that, and to obviously just be on point as a whole. And obviously, you know, we love being able to have these discussions. And also at the same time, don't hesitate to, when you listen to our episodes, please don't ever hesitate to get involved. You hear the episodes come out, great, no problem. Use the hashtag #AskTheGoodman. We'll always do what we can to interact in any way, shape or form. We started it off during the pandemic when we were doing some Clubhouse episodes just to kind of fill the gap a little bit. But obviously now it is, obviously we are using it in general. Ask the Goodman. It doesn't really matter from what episode. Ask it. Let's have a discussion about it on all forms of social media. Feel free to follow myself, Goodman Daps, Manny Owl, The Quest Love. You already know the vibes. Feel free to follow Malik Beard as well. Obviously, the man behind the camera and obviously making us all look fly and them things there.
Yeah, man.
So obviously you got to give a big shout out.
Always snapping him just so you know who the man is behind the camera.
Yeah, word, we have to.
That's
Because
right now.
Yeah, you know, he's a little bit shy.
Yeah, shy, man.
You know, I'm just trying to do that just to keep it humble. Like, oh my God, he's so shy, gentle giant. Oh, I love it. No, but obviously it's been a while, to be fair, since we've kind of us as a team have caught up. So obviously what's been happening with a lot of the man them recently? Quest, chat to me. What's been going on with you? You know, how you been managing things? Pandemic, things are starting to ease up.
Dislocated my finger a couple of days ago.
I need you to explain to me how that happened right now.
You know, I'm just like
That means it's embarrassing. I want to hear it now more.
Do you know what it is? It's not even that embarrassing. It's just silly. I hurt myself a lot playing football. So second week of uni in first year, I broke my hand playing football, and then it healed. Went back. The first day I went back, broke my wrist on the other side, on my other hand playing football. Yeah, I've broken ribs. This is literally football.
From football.
Yeah, I'm clumsy. I'll
man breaking ribs from.
But I'm really fast, but I can't slow down fast enough. So I will run full pelt, and if it's your elbow that I meet, then that's it. And I'm also not careful. So like at the end of the day, I'll keep playing. And it's when I get home and I'm like, okay, cool, this really hurts.
Maybe a trip to the hospital is worth it now.
Yeah,
you're not a serious somebody, bruv. You are ridiculous.
I just like play too much, to be honest. Anything
new for you? Just in terms of stuff anything of note, anything notable for you that's kind of happened for you recently?
Yeah, just working, putting my head down. I don't know if I've mentioned the book I wrote a book before.
I was gonna draw you out. If you didn't, still I was waiting for you to say that. Talk about it.
Yeah, I wrote a book before. It's a collection of poems, and I've finished. I say finished. It's in like the third stage of drafting.
Okay.
I'm on the second book. So working with a few really interesting creatives on that vision.
Okay.
And last week I made a big stride where essentially all the pieces that are going to go into it are done.
Nice.
It's just ordering, having some photography done, and then doing like the page structure and page design. But yeah, it's an interesting process. I think, truth be told, it was meant to be done at some point last year, but 2020 was not the year of sticking to plans, because the plan will just change from underneath.
2020 just said, "Oh, you got plans? Don't say that." Out. And just literally just basically just clearing the whole board. So that's fair. You got a rough idea of when you're looking to potentially release that? Anything as of yet?
I'm just having fun. Like that's kind of my thing. I have deadlines, but I've structured everything so I will definitely be done before those deadlines. So within that time frame, I'm not being too tough on myself. I'm just enjoying the process.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the other thing I'm working on is there's this page on Instagram. It's like a platform for people to just say things.
Okay.
And the idea behind it is like Instagram has become this kind of really tidy thing where you present yourself as it's almost like it's primarily a marketing tool for your personal brand.
Yeah.
Which means you don't get to really have like normal conversation on there.
Yeah.
So the idea behind it was like, what happens if you had a space where you could just say things? You had a question, you could just say it. You'd learned something, you could just say it. You had an experience, you could just say it. And the results have been great. Like a lot of people the most exciting bit for me is that people are feeling liberated, or they feel less lonely, or they're hearing a thought that they've had and they've kind of thought they had to keep quiet or secret, and they hear someone else saying it feels less weird, or
and
it
doesn't seem so out of place as a result, because you're just thinking, oh, is this just my own way of thinking? And you're thinking, oh, you're out of place. And then there's someone else that said, it's like, oh, wow, there's actually a safe space where I can actually talk about this.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing is it's not always deep stuff. Sometimes it's really deep things. Sometimes it's like someone's talking about not being able to think about something to record for their voice note, and then just talking about that. But then someone else who wants to talk learns like, okay, cool, it's okay for me to not know what to say sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, that's been a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen that page as well. It looks sick.
What's the
really,
app?
Really good.
That's lit.
I definitely say recommend it. Plug the page.
What's the page?
It's just saying things out loud, but with no G on saying.
Okay.
So saying things out loud.
Yeah, good page, man. Definitely go check it out still.
See, obviously, big shout out to, of course, our resident philosopher, because that's what I call you. You always come with something profound and different that there's a certain perspective that I think no one potentially experiences. You're just like, oh shit, yeah, I've never actually kind of thought of it in that way. So saying things out loud, you've heard it here first, saying things out loud without the G. Check it out on Instagram. Get your opinions, get your thoughts off, and be in a safe space where you can pretty much discuss just about anything.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's been lit. Pandemic has been all right for the most part. I think working from home, that's pretty much been normal for the most part. Not too long ago, I recently became debt-free. No debts against my name.
Congratulations.
Credit report free and them things there. So, that's
3 points.
Trust me, all them things there, little points going up and that. So I'm definitely happy and chuffed about that. So obviously just work on improving, credit and building accordingly and all that adulting shit. But yeah, no, that's pretty much been it. It's been really, really good. I have no real complaints. But yeah, obviously it's now finally time after that little catch up, little icebreaker and whatnot. Time to Manny that just became assistant head teacher. Whoa. And also recently, there's another big thing that I recently forgot that happened with you recently.
What's that?
Did you not just recently move into a new house?
Oh yeah.
How? Can someone explain to me?
What's it telling me about myself that I don't know?
How am I remembering this beyond the person that actually has the new place?
Yeah, listen, it's been a very, very busy few weeks, man. That's why, literally, I feel like I'm still, mine's on overdrive. But yeah. I've been in my new place for about 3 weeks now.
Jeez.
And then, as we said earlier, I was appointed assistant head for a new school, and that will start in September. So it's been a good kind of round up to all of that, but it's been a very busy and tiring couple of weeks. But yeah, listen, just give God thanks. Just happy to be here, man. In terms of the pandemic and stuff, I always say it, like I always just like to look for the silver linings. For me, I've been able to go into work as normal, which is quite unusual for most teachers. Many of them have had to work from home. I've been fortunate enough to just go into the classroom and do what I need to do. And that's because of the nature of the children's needs. The children that I support, many of them are vulnerable, so all of them have to be in school. So in that way, I've been quite fortunate and quite blessed. If anything, I was a little bit sad when I heard everything was easy. And I was like, oh wait, like I started to get used used to the whole, I don't know.
Not dealing with that many people, essentially.
Yeah, like when I heard, like when everyone was like, oh, like listen, we can go out now, and I was just thinking, okay, like I wasn't that excited about it, but I think this pandemic's allowed me to kind of go into myself more than I would normally do, but I was definitely comfortable in doing that. I love my own company, and I spent many months actually without my daughter and my wife at home, because when my daughter was born last year, she spent some time in Bermuda, where my wife is from.
Okay.
So in total, she spent about 5 months there, and she's 9 months, so she spent, essentially more time in Bermuda than she has in London. And in that time, I was able to, I was by myself, and family kept checking in on me, like, "Are you all right? Like, do you need food? Like, are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm just fine. I am just fine." Ask Goodman Malik. I was productive. So for me, this year has been it's been an interesting one. It's had difficult times, but I never like to focus on them too much. I think
it's a bit interesting in that, because everyone obviously with the ease on restrictions and that, most people are like, oh yeah, great, the pubs, the restaurants, the bars, and all this and all that. And the one thing that's actually consistently been on my mind has been gym. Like I've been screaming it from the jump, like, listen, you lot can have all of your Las Iguanas and your TGIs and all of them things there. See me, I need to work out. Bait. And obviously 2 weeks back in, I've been humbled every session that I've been to so far.
It's good though, man.
Oh, listen, I must have done, I think I did chest on Tuesday. Yo, rattled. I was rattled. The way you're doing it, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's light work. And you know your body thinking it's light work, and adrenaline pumps in, and all of a sudden, just get that wobble.
shaky.
Shake. I was rattled.
Start scanning the room for some help.
Listen.
Legs in there.
Camera on me.
Listen. Man's not even going to talk too tough about some of the. I'm not going to talk too tough about some of that stuff. But to be fair, now it's everyone's just kind of, most of them, like people that are my friends, obviously you guys, and obviously my other mates outside of the pod, obviously just no one's really been too gassed per se about, oh yeah, things are on going out, let's go out, let's do this. No one really cares.
I love it, but for a different reason.
Go on.
I can choose to stay at home now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love it. Oh my God. I can invite me, but I can enjoy saying no.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, but I can I have a choice and I can exercise it. I can go, but I could not as well, rather than...
You just can't go anywhere.
Yeah, being in a situation where there are no options.
Yeah.
Apart from other people's houses, which is illegal. Which is then there's no option.
Yeah.
But
no, I hear it still. It's definitely been, everyone has their own motivations for why they are happy and, glad for things to be easing up. Some people it's the clubs and the bar, or the bars and the restaurants. Others it's just fitness and other things. And other things it's just about actually having the autonomy to be like, okay, you know what? There is now an opportunity to go out. I might not. As opposed to it being a case of you literally have no other option than to say no because everything's pretty much shut off. And that's definitely that. But I'm glad to see that everyone has been well. Everyone's been keeping well. Everyone's been keeping busy in the team. And obviously that's lit. That's great to hear. And I'm pretty sure, obviously, with a lot of our listeners as well, everyone's had their own experiences as well. So please, guys, feel free to, tweet into us about, how things have been, with your experiences. Don't hesitate to use the hashtag once again, Ask the Goodman. Obviously, ideally, we'll always try and respond accordingly and, ideally engage in conversation, because that's what we want. We always want to be able to, interact with our listeners and those that follow us and those that obviously want to be able to just, kind of speak to the people beyond what they hear when they're, listening on the podcast or whether they're watching it via YouTube and so on. So definitely a thing. Now, obviously, had that nice little catch up. Now we enter the main. My guys, obviously, we all have, those things that kind of like we regard as, oh yeah, bromance and so on and so forth. But, what's everyone's actual view of what a bromance is? Like, obviously, I'll open it to the crew to kind of get your opinions as to what you think a bromance is.
I think for me, I think a bromance is a unique or special type of relationship that you have with another guy. Which could be with all of your friends, but I think with a bromance specifically, so for me, from experience, I think with bromance, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that you've known for a long time. I think it could be someone that you know, let's say, for example, at work. So I think it could be someone that you've met at work. You've only known each other for a short period of time. Could be a month, could be a couple of months, could be a year.
Yeah.
And you have something... you have a connection. There's chemistry between you and that person, and it's easily identified or noticeable from other people as well. Because in a lot of situations where people have said, you and so and so's bromance, you and so and so's bromance, it's usually from other people. And I'm trying to think what they notice. I think it's just a matter of you just having a great rapport with someone.
Yeah.
And when it comes to chemistry, it's kind of like you're just on the same wave. Like, you know, we have similar interests, but sometimes it's just like you're on my vibe. Like, you get me. And so from experience, that's not always necessarily your closest friends or the ones that you've known for a very long time. Yeah. It could just be someone that you've met through another person. It could be someone that you've worked with, but you've got quite a special relationship. That's what I imagine a bromance to be in terms of like when I'm thinking of a definition for it. It might change as I hear what you lot have to say about it, but that's what I think about.
Yeah.
What about you,
Quest, what about you, bro? Why do you just look so? Why have you? Wait, hold on, wait, hold on. Let's just clarify something, bro. Why are you looking like a rock star, bro? Like,
because he is one.
Like, brother, you come like you're just coming off a tour, cuz.
Questlove is a rock star.
Or just going on tour.
Or going on tour, bro. Like you just passed by just to fit us into your busy schedule. Like, what do you think this is? Like,
I mean, I have to. I love you guys. I have to show up for it. But I think for me, bromance would be very similar to what Goodman Manny said. But I guess in my mind, there's always kind of been that question of what does it hinge on? And I guess that you've kind of answered some of those questions for me. I guess it's more of a chemistry based thing rather than anything that you might personally see as more tangible or like the foundation of. Because for most, I think there's a difference between like your male friends and then people that other people tell you, oh yeah, you guys have a bit of a bromance. Like your main friends might be more akin to brothers or family. Because those relationships are based on more holistically tangible things. Whereas like just having good chemistry, like you can have literally, like you can go on a job interview. I remember being younger and you go on job interviews and there'll be someone else there. You have the same kind of vibe. And for that whole like day or like the training process of once you get a job, that whole day, 2 days, you guys are just vibing. It's a great vibe. And you never see them again. And it's like, it doesn't take anything from you because it's not necessarily built around any substance that you would miss were it not to be there. But then I feel like, I say feel like it's because I know where this question is, a line of questioning is going. So I guess there's that whole idea of like what is required of you in that, and then what does that say about your loyalties? How quickly do you establish these relationships?
Yeah. I think in terms of what you both said, relation to bromance, I think generally that's pretty much it. I think it's not necessarily limited to time or how long you've known that individual for. At the end of the day, if you come across someone and there's just that instant similarity and you just instantly get that vibe and aura from this person, I fucks with this person. I get this person. Me and this person vibe and connect. It's not something that is really hard to establish, if that makes sense. So you know how sometimes with some mates, it's like, oh, maybe you don't like them at first, then you get to know them, you're like, oh, all right, this person's all right. No, with this person, it's pretty much like, just like that, pretty much instantaneous. Like, oh, raw. Yeah, I dig this person. Yeah, this person's calm. Yeah, this person's kind of like me. Yeah, it's lit. And then obviously at the end of the day, you then just end up just building such a strong rapport very, very quickly that it can't be helped but be noticed by other people. So typical places that we're talking about, the workplace, I don't know, other places, other social spaces, maybe the gym, you know, for all you know. And all these type of things, for example, maybe you've got similar like goals in terms of what you want to achieve. Next thing you know, you're looking at the foods that you're eating, boom, bromance. Just like that out of nowhere. You know, it can really, really come that quickly. Likewise, you can also have a long-term or a long-time bromance with one of your guys that you're just so really close with, and the two of you just behave in very similar ways, very similar mannerisms, very similar banter and stuff, and you're just like, oh, raw. You might, but then at the same time, it goes back to the whole thing of you don't really class that as a bromance anymore because they're pretty much your bro, your brother, or like, you know, twin and all that stuff. And this, that, and the other.
I wonder though. I feel like, so for me, I'm trying to think. Like as you was talking, I was thinking like, which one of my close boys like do I have a bromance with? And I can't think of any of like my good friends, you know, that I have a bromance with. But I do think you can have one for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
But then I just wonder if that hinges on like where that bromance developed is kind of limited to that space, maybe. Like I wonder if a bromance can develop into the type of friendship that you have with your other friends once you leave the workplace.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to compartmentalize my thoughts and just think.
I guess it just depends on what their personality traits are like. Because, for example, I've had mates, for example. So for me, I've got a core group of my closest peoples, right? And at the same time, not all those close people are all friends with one another. Because obviously, for example, they have different interests or different ideas. And for me, I've always been a big fan of having different friendship groups. I think it's good and I think it's healthy. But then at the same time, like you've rightly said, some of these bromances are conditional depending on where you are or what you're doing, and they may never translate into anything beyond that. So maybe it's a case of, this is something you got a bromance with at work. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be someone that becomes part of your close circle. So they might be someone that you really get along with at work, and that, for example, great banter, this, that. If you're going through something, maybe on a personal level, either really, really positive or really, really negative, what's the likelihood that you're going to call that person that you have a bromance with?
I think that's what I was thinking of. I think you kind of summarised what I was thinking. I was just thinking to myself, like, the people that I know, other people would say I've got a bromance with.
Yeah.
They aren't necessarily my closest friends.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like limited to a particular space.
Right.
And on top of that, I know that the things that I value in my other friendships is quite different from what is seen in that bromance. In that, if I needed help or support, or even like you just said, if I needed something, the first person I'm thinking of isn't the person that I have that bromance with.
Right. Yeah.
Typically. And that doesn't make that relationship fickle.
Yeah.
I think for me, it just makes it quite clear that actually a bromance is something that can just happen with someone very quickly. It could go on for an extended period of time, but it does have its limitations typically. Yeah. And the only reason I conclude like that is just because when I think of my closest friends, like I said, I wouldn't have what other people would typically say is a bromance. Yeah. People I have a bromance with, the relationship is great relationship, but you know, outside of work, we either don't talk like that. Yeah, it's that we just don't talk like that.
Yeah.
So it can't develop much after that. It is kind of just like limited almost to that space. Doesn't mean it has to be, but it is.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the difference.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I guess it just really depends on how much of a friendship you're willing to cultivate with that person outside of the typical settings that allowed said bromance to kind of essentially come out of in the first place, if that kind of makes sense.
What was you going to say before I spoke?
What I was going to say is I feel like it's a big part of a bromance is the word romance, and it's rooted in romantic gesture and romantic thinking and that presumed romantic elements. And what I've been thinking is, if you take the bromance part away and you just look at it as romance, how easy is it to navigate from romance to friendship anyway? Just on a normal, on that basis, like a lot of people, like romance is kind of compartmentalized on certain moments you share with that person, certain places you were both at, certain incidences that hold you together. And then outside of those, it then becomes a thing of, it feels like more work because it's outside of the confines of that anyway. So now it's like you're laying new ground and then like cultivating it and then planting and then you have to grow. Whereas with the romance, it's like you're in a field that's grown.
Anything can happen.
Yeah, and you're both in that field, and that field is you're there. You can harvest right now. But a friendship is that. So in my mind, there's the question of, with a bromance, I think that might be why a lot of the time it's compartmentalized to these spaces or these moments or these times.
Yeah.
Because even if it was just a romance, like how often does that transition really happen successfully? Even in relationships, that's why a lot of relationships don't really work, because you're not friends with this person
before you actually get into something romantic. Yeah.
Or even when you are in something romantic, like it's just something romantic. Like you're not friends with this person that you share romantic moments with.
It works both ways.
You just share romantic moments with this person you like.
Yeah.
That's not friendship.
Yeah, it's very like a fluffy. In the beginning, like when you're dating someone, there's a lot of romantic moments because in the
you want to show out.
The courting stage, you're both trying to impress each other. You show the best of each other. You only want to see the best of each other in that sense. And like you were saying, once you go past the dating stage and you're now official, you have to put in some work. You kind of got to water the grass in that sense. And to do that, I think as human beings anyway, I think we sometimes we struggle anyway, I think, to do that, which is why relationships in terms of friendships or even like relationships between a couple, for instance, that breaks down because it's very easy to be romantic. Like how many you think of the show, for example, is it You?
Yeah.
On Netflix, The Stalker. If every woman that met him only met him for like only had an experience with him on the first or second date, let's say, they'd probably say he's a very romantic guy, lovely guy. But the minute that relationship starts to develop, or he wants to develop it further, you start to very quickly realize that, oh, actually, the person that I'm about to be invested in or is trying to invest in me has some characteristics or some traits, that I'm not too sure I want to work with or whatever. So it's very easy. Anybody can be romantic, but not everybody necessarily can build or develop a friendship with you. And I think that's the key. And I don't think that means that anyone that I've had a bromance with, that's not possible. But I think it just so happens to be that it has its place. And that place for me, for example, is like work. Yeah, like that's the best example I can think of, because outside of home, it's just work. And people that I might have a bromance with at work, it does feel kind of limited to that. And if I want to develop that into a friendship, like you said, there's more work that would need to be done.
It all fundamentally depends on whether or not you're willing to cultivate said bromance into a friendship that goes beyond the circumstances that allowed said bromance to come about in the first place, right? And I think that's fundamentally where that comes from. And it also goes back to that whole thing of, this is why. And I think also as well, and I think that's the key thing, what hinges on whether or not you want to cultivate that. I think there are also going to be certain things that you also observe of that person that makes, because obviously, all right, let's take a good example. We've all got mates here that we absolutely, love and fucks with, right? And at the same time, they have some traits that make you want to punch them. Like what's wrong with you? Do you get it? Like, think about it, right? When you have someone that is ideally your friend, there are going to be certain traits that absolutely there's going to be synergy, right? Where you're very, very similar to them in quite a few different areas, right? And also going to be other aspects that you're not really going to fucks with. And it's like, oh, you're annoying. But at the same time, is it enough to make you think, oh, I can't be friends with this person? Probably not. Because it's probably not really that deep. It's just probably that thing of, it's annoying and you're dry in this regard, but you're still my homie.
Yeah.
Right? There's a level of patience and cultivation and acceptance of this individual that they're your friend. They've got their traits that are a bit good and a bit not so good, but they're your friend. And that's a fundamental choice, right? Because you've chosen to still cultivate that friendship and essentially be friends with that individual, right? But it's different. And it's coming from something with a bromance because it's essentially situational. And then that step to ideally cultivate that into a friendship, that's purely down to you. And based on what you observe about said individual, you think, oh, you know what, this person can probably, I could probably kick it with this person on a cheeky weekend and so on and so forth.
I think so.
If you kind of get, you kind of get what I'm saying.
I guess that, but I think for a long time I used to say like I don't have time for love, but really after doing some studying, I don't have time for like Renaissance era romance, which is basically the type of romance that most of us are seeing as romance now.
What do you mean by Renaissance era romance?
So it's the romance that emerged when ideas or philosophical ideas of unrequited love then met things which extended the expectation of love from being something that you could find some type of tangibility into something that like it's okay if you love someone forever and they don't even look at you, like that type of sentiment. And then sentiments like
just to clarify, me, I don't want that one. If I love you, you better if I love you, you love me back. Don't want to love it out. Please continue.
But then also things like agape love started to come in with the Greek idea of like the three types of love and things like that. And then love started to expand into these novel themes and these poetic themes where like comedies and tragedies became more of a staple thing. And then these stories of love became more prominent than the realities of love. So the stories that were told about Romeo and Juliet, being that Romeo and Juliet follows and echoes a lot of those stories where if you love someone, to die for them is not a question. But that's a very romantic thing because it's not practical. If you love someone to that extent and you have children and a mortgage and you have bills and you have dependents, to die for them would be a damaging thing to everyone else that you said you loved. So it then becomes a bit murky trying to mold like this mystical idea of love, which emerged around the Renaissance era, with realities. And I think that's what romance today kind of is like, where it's this mystical kind of high of infatuation, but also like reciprocated attention. You're both buying into these ideas in those moments, and I think that is what I think that's more effects. That has more of an effect than actually pausing to be like, oh yeah, I don't like this person, that's why it's not progressing to a friendship. I think we're just really mystified by those moments that we don't even think that far. And in my experience, I avoid that thinking part. So if I feel like, oh, got a good vibe, a bit of a bromance with someone, I don't want to get any closer to you. Like I'll probably avoid you as much as I can. So those moments are great because I know the moment I am like, okay, cool, how is this person really? It's not really, there's no substance there really at that moment. If you are a little bit of a dickhead, I don't have to be around you. We're just not going to, that's it, it's done. So I think a lot of us put that off and we compartmentalize it into those like places because you don't want to do that extra bit of like, oh man, now I genuinely have a reason to not talk to this person now. Where it's easier to just be in that mystified
and just accept it as it is. I think it goes into that whole thing of and Sim's talking about the whole thing of the romance aspect of expectation versus reality, whereby it's okay. So sometimes you see someone for how you want to see them or you can imagine them being, rather than seeing them
as they
for
are.
who they are and seeing them as they are.
I wish T was here, man. Do you know why? Because T introduced this word one time on Clubhouse, this
homoerotic. Listen, I've been thinking about this entire time. I'm going to cuss him out.
I feel like Quest would be the closest to be able to define what that even means and summarize, because his point essentially is that men idolize other men. Like we love other men, but it kind of almost has no boundaries. It's kind of the vibe I got from it. It's not a good thing in that we love and adore our gender.
I think the problem,
detriment to other people.
Yeah,
is that what homoerotic is?
So that's a big part of it. But then when we were talking about it the other time, I googled it because I was like, I feel like there's a bit more to this definition that we're just not touching on. And that bit more is that those things exist and then they have a sexual element to them. Oh. So it might not be a sexual, like the reason why it's homoerotica rather than homosexuality is because it's not a permanent sexual element. So it's not like you're permanently attracted to men.
Fluid.
But like in those moments where your loyalty to manhood is affirmed, and examples he gave is like you would
like rugby players, for example, doing stuff on the coach on the way to a football game, but then at the end of that, it's just banter
And
with
some
their
of
boys.
and the interesting thing, and some of those things they wouldn't do with their girlfriends,
Yeah.
which is the I've been in some at uni. I had a bit of a reputation of like just don't do that stuff near me. I'm not. That's you. Fine. I don't need to fight anyone. But don't involve me when you're doing your stuff in the shower. It's cool. I'll shower at home. I don't mind. It's absolutely fine. But you see some things, and then on a night out, then you would know that none of them would ever do any of those things in a cheeky way, in a playful way with women. So then the question is there of like, why is it that you feel more comfortable?
Yeah.
Why is it that you feel more comfortable in a shower full of naked men to do some of these things than with women that you say you are attracted to sexually?
Can I offer a perspective on that?
Go on.
Do you know what I think it kind of comes down to a certain degree, is the fact that within a lot of these spaces, right, for one thing, I think we can all agree to a fairly large degree that the male ego can be quite fragile, right? So, as a result, especially for a lot of individuals that are very, very comfortable in their sexuality, for example, right? Playing about, in the showers, get the towel, all of the usual banter stuff that, and it's quite common with like, people that are in sports fraternities or stuff like that, right? So rugby teams, certain football teams, possible, and on all these different things. I don't necessarily think there is a sexual element towards it per se, but I do definitely think that there has to be a certain level of comfortability, and I think the comfortability of that comes from the sense of camaraderie and bonds that said group would have. So it's like there are certain things that wouldn't be that you could do that to anybody else that was a guy, it wouldn't make sense, but amongst that particular group it makes sense because it's just banter at the end of the day.
I understand the perspective, but I disagree.
Why?
In that in those moments you're jovial, or not you, but those people, you're jovial, you're high-spirited, you're enjoying yourself, and a big part of your enjoyment involves in some way your sexual reproductive organs. So for me, there is enjoyment which includes in some way your sexual reproductive organs. What my question would be, why not? Like, do you get that same enjoyment in other situations? If not, then it's like, okay, cool. The question, I'm not making the statement, but then the question is there to be asked of like,
I think,
is there not more to this?
I think that may be due to yeah.
Keep going.
You about to get cooked. But the listeners will understand in a second. But essentially what it comes down to, right, is basically it comes down to a very, very simple thing, which is I think amongst guys there's a certain level of understanding that, this is just banter, it's just play. And to then take it outside of that to, let's say, in a romantic sense with, within a heterosexual relationship, for example, you might be a bit wary of doing that. Why? Because this person may not fundamentally understand. However, it is great that our boy, the Ultimates, no, you will never get a pass. You're going to get cooked today. I'm cooking you throughout this episode. I'm going to flog you.
I'm just glad T is here because this is...
Yeah, this is actually your field.
I literally said your name about maybe 3 minutes ago, and I said, I wish T is here. Yeah. Because there's this word that he introduced, this homoerotica word, and I want to... I want that word. I want to discuss it. So that's basically what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah,
we're just kind of exploring that.
Yeah.
Check 1, 2. And Quest.
Still nothing.
Quest offered a definition, an extended definition, I think, to what we've already kind of discussed or seen. Because, I think it's quite limited what I think of the word. So, looking forward to T.
To be honest,
that particular
everybody can be content as hell. I want you to know, and I want the listeners to know. You see me, Goodman Daps, I'm cooking you tea today, consistently. You will not be safe today. I'm cooking him every single time. on the plus side, as per usual,
Check one. Oh yes.
on the plus side, at least he's come with the usual uniform. You've come with the sunglasses today.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, man.
Bring it back. I felt.
Bring it back.
This guy here looking like a pirate, cuz you know, big man thing. All you need is just like one young hat. I swear you finna look like a black Jack Sparrow. I swear down. I swear, bruv. It is amazing. No, but obviously, to be fair, we were talking about and this is obviously a concept that I know you've brought up before, and we were all kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. So the topic of the bromance and stuff, and how you feel it ties into homoeroticism. The floor is now yours, because I kind of want some clarity behind that, because obviously we're all out here dropping different ideas.
Let's give a bit of context as well.
Yeah,
So
thank you. That's
So
what I
Quest was also saying, so when I brought it up and I said I want us to like explore this a bit further, because it's a word that I've heard us talk about in our WhatsApp group, and Quest, said that he's gone online and he's kind of looked at a definition that added a bit more to what it was, and he was saying that there are aspects of it that are closely linked to say sexual activity.
So
Do you want to define it?
basically, from what I saw, is the loyalty is a big factor, but then the thing that made it homoerotic was that there was a sexual nature to some of those loyalties, or how tightly they're held. And the reason why it wasn't homosexuality, because it wasn't a permanent sexual component, but it was homoerotic because there are, in those moments, they can be sexual components in them. So in my head it was like, I can't. And the example given that we're talking about was the rugby team and football teams, and some of the things that happen in shower,
and the
changing
coaches,
rooms,
yeah, like
and how, in my mind, it's like these people are doing these things, they are enjoying these things, and their sexual reproductive organs are in some way involved in these things. So because of that, I wouldn't, in my mind, like, it's not. It can be, two things can be true. It can be banter and also homoerotic.
and a form of loyalty. Because he was talking about it and saying, Daps was saying, I think this is just, a group of guys, that kind of camaraderie type of thing, you're doing it with the boys or whatever. But again, the definition that when you described it a number of months ago about the loyalty, the kind of like the blind loyalty to men, I think it still ties into that, because even if you're willing to use your sexual organs for fun, for banter or whatever, because that's a space where this happens, I feel a lot of men feel like they have to be a part of that. Ultimately, I don't think many men go into that situation thinking, I definitely want to do this today. But whether it's because it's the culture of that particular, so like with certain, so the reason why I said the rugby club, for instance, is because there's a reputation. I know that because I worked in a bar at my uni, and when we had sports nights, the rugby boys were the worst. And the stories, the stories that I heard about the rugby boys were crazy. I even worked with someone, he's a teacher, and he was a rugby player, and he told me some stories, and I'm like, what?
Yo.
And I'm like, what? Yeah. I was like, where's the line? And he's just like, it's just what you do. Like guys doing stuff in cups, other mates, drinking it, and other mates doing this.
Yeah.
And that. People sleeping and flicking things in their face and whatever, all in the name of banter, whatever. But for me, it's like there must be.
I don't even want to know what those.
Yeah.
All right, listen, do you know what?
But there's an element of loyalty.
I was like, oh my god.
But there's an element of loyalty to it if I think
that makes
people
makes you feel safe enough to do those things
and do it, even if you might not necessarily want to do it. Like that's not what you would have done before.
Yeah.
But now that you're in that space, okay, cool. I guess I'll do it with the guys as well.
I think again, the only difference or the only thing that separates it from homosexuality is homophobia. And I think if men weren't homophobic and there wasn't sort of like a problem with it, then we would be more open with it, similar to how women are. I remember sort of being, I think I was like 16, and I was playing for Ilford.
Yeah.
And it was my first time playing with the first team. And they were like, yeah, come showers. I said, oh, sorry, what? Like, I shower when I get home. They're like, no, we shower together. And these are like grown men to me. So we go to the change room after the match, and the gaffer's giving the talk. And we're just there, and everyone's just getting naked. And I'm there thinking, okay. When you're just looking at the ceiling thinking, this can't be normal. Because this is gay. That's obviously my mindset at the time. Then all of a sudden, I'm looking over at my boy who was also in the first team as well. Like, we were both 16 and these lot are like, what, 20 plus? So, or late 20s to 30s. We're just chilling. And they're literally so free, just pulling on their knobs, sort of spanking each other and stuff like that. And I couldn't take off my clothes. I was like, no, this camaraderie, this bonding isn't for me. But then obviously now looking back at it, that's just how how men were allowed to sort of be free, and the only time men are allowed that sort of freedom without sort of being judged is in a sports
In some of those
or
spaces.
in a sort of or gym, or when you're allowed to sort of, when you've been such a man and that whole bravado is fine. It's like, oh well, you know what, we can never question your masculinity, and I think that's when it turns into. When you're outside of that space, that safe space, so to speak, you're not in a gym, you're not in a sports club or something like that.
Yeah.
Then it's sort of, now you still have that camaraderie. You still want to sort of
be friend. Yeah.
You want to. I don't know if it's admiration, but there's a loyalty to your gender, whether you or not you like that man. Another man can see another man and be like, you know what, I like you. I'm gonna try and impress you, or I'm gonna connect with you, or there's a level of chemistry and stuff like that. But they would never admit to themselves or to anybody out loud
that they have admiration for that person. Yeah. Do you know what? Now that you mention it, kind of like that kind of makes sense, because obviously I was in boarding school in Nigeria for 3 years, and obviously we would all shower together. It wasn't even a thing. Do you get it? Like, it's not like, boarding house, communal showers, everyone's essentially doing their thing. Enough times, guys. And again, coming from ends when I did, right? I'm 14. All I've known is ends. All I've known is the hood. And these guys are just walking about, bruv. Listen, I will never forget, like, I think one of the first times must have been there and that, yeah. So it wasn't in my first year of boarding school. It was in my second year. So the school I was at, they had 2 different locations. So I've shifted to the second location of the school, which was on like mainland Lagos. And obviously there you had communal showers and that. What? Listen, them ones there, everyone's showering, you get the sponge, whoosh, bah. Yeah, like. But the funny thing is that it was normal. It was never viewed as, oh yeah,
what are you doing?
Yeah. As what are you doing? Like it, like that, and I think that's the key thing. I think a big part of it really does depend on, you weren't even hearing guys saying stuff like, oh, no homo or stuff like that, because at the end of the day, at that point, we're all guys, and I think the core thing of it is that we're all very, very well rooted and comfortable in our sexuality. So we never even thought of it as anything.
When did that stop? When did we when did we stop being comfortable with our sexualities, and words like pause or no homo came into play, and all of a sudden you couldn't do these things?
I think there are different aspects of culture that come into it, and I think there are also different aspects of religion that also come into it. So on the cultural aspect, so if we let's look at us here, like in the UK, diaspora, right? Many of us are either African diaspora or West Indian diaspora, right? A lot of the culture and things relating to homosexuality and stuff are, so, in aspects of, African diaspora, you've got the big parts of it, being a big no-no because of aspects of religion, Christianity, Islam, and so on and so forth. Same thing, obviously, as well for West Indian diaspora, right? And you hear a lot of these things like, oh, you hear, but then again, at the same time, if you look at both communities, they both have fairly prominent underground, LGBT communities, for example, right? And I think it's less so about the and again I'm not trying to speak in general, so I'm just offering based on my observation before anyone thinks that I'm talking as a rule of thumb for everyone. But I think what it comes into is a big part of it is it's the optics. It's not necessarily about the action per se. It's just that, oh, this even look, oh yeah, nah. But back home, for example, right, a lot of these guys are very, very well rooted within their sexuality because they know. But I think it's also a case of because these guys know each other and they know each other outside of that. If that kind of makes sense. No. So I mean in the sense of, so all 4 of us are boys, yeah? Let's say we're all cool. We all know each other. We all know things relating to our sex lives and this, that, and the other. So if we're now doing something stupid, like, oh, let's say we've all come from gym and we've all had a shower, and now guys are acting up and dashing soap at each other and rare tear and so on and so forth, we're not going to think, oh, yeah, that's gay, pause. Probably not, because at the end of the day, we're all very well rooted within our sexualities and we know that we're all heterosexual, right? So at the end of the day, we wouldn't even think twice about it. But if it's coming from someone that you don't potentially know, the optics of that could be like, Raw, what, you kind of, you swinging the other way, and then it's immediately shot down as, oh yeah, no, pause, no homo, so on and so forth.
I think you can. I think people that aren't secure in their sexuality certainly struggle, and I think that's an aspect that plays a part in why we hear terms like no homo.
Question for you as well: do you think aspects of toxic masculinity come into that as well, whereby you're so determined to be what is known as a man or a man's man and stuff like that? Do you think that also plays into it?
Yeah, 100%. It's a toxic mindset, and it kind of like perpetuates traits. But what I was going to say was specific to your question around, when does that stop, and when does the no homo and the pause thing start coming in? I remember being in year 7, and like, some of our boys in school would do all the stuff that we just spoke about, and like no one really bat an eyelid. Some people in the beginning used to like say something about it, but it was more like they couldn't believe it. But it's not that they were like against the person that was doing that kind of behavior. It then did become normal, very similar to what you would then see in any other type of sports club. And this was actually like our football team. So after a football game, you get guys literally like hitting each other in a towel and stuff, and just like doing a madness in there. But there was never any question about their sexuality. It was almost like, it was just like, that's just literally what the boys were doing or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's this, I would imagine that the same group of people, there's individuals within that are very much a part of the culture of people that would then start saying the whole no homo pause thing or whatever. And I think specific to like the sub community that I'm talking about, I think hip hop like had a massive influence on that, because when you hear music where men are trying to tell you what a man is, and in most cases that is that you are the most aggressive, you are the most violent, you don't take anything, any guy wearing skinny jeans, any guy that touches you in a particular way, why you staring at me, nigga, you gay, like those kind of lines and phrases that you hear in music, we idolized for the most part of our teenage years these rappers, I'm talking about my sub community in particular. So after a while, when you're hearing that and that's drummed into you, you start to, you form a perception of masculinity, and it might not necessarily all be influenced by that, because you might have a father figure at home that gives you an example of what masculinity is. Your boys might have an influence on that. You've got other men, brothers or whatever, but let's say you take away all of those things.
Looking at the indirect.
If you take away all of those things and think about what it is that we consume, and someone's told us what masculinity is, what manhood looks like, doesn't necessarily have to be right. And we take that in, and we don't necessarily always have people that would then combat that and say, actually, no, it's all right. You can hold hands with your brother on the street. That's cool. Because if you go to certain parts of Asia, Indian men will hold hands with each other. Certain countries within certain continents, they kiss each other on the cheek. That's normal. So sometimes the lack of education plays a part in that as well. But also it's what we take in. What we take in. And in my case, I took in a lot from music and the culture that came around that. And I had for many years certain phrases and words battered at me. No homo, pause, any guy wearing skinny jeans, whatever. And then your boy starts saying the same thing. Oh, you wear skinny jeans? Oh, brother, you gay. And, and like you said, male ego is fragile. So when someone starts calling you out, even if you know that's not you, you don't want to be the victim. Your back's against the wall by default and you kick off. Yeah, sometimes you're too young. And then what we do there is we cultivate an environment where everyone now is just engaging in this toxic mindset. Until you get old enough, you matriculate and you start realizing, actually, none of these things define me as a man at all. Yeah. And if you're in a space where you play sports, let's say, they probably have way more of a freedom, as an example, than some people that might not play sports. Because if you play football but you're in the hood, you're going to be in a space where you see men like you at 16, you see men acting a certain way and they're confident in their manhood. Doesn't mean anything to them. So you can come back to ends and people say something, but at least you've kind of got like you've got a different point of view. You've seen something else that shows you that actually, but these are men. Some of them are married, have wives, but they were walking around naked, fine with each other. It doesn't make a difference. Whereas someone that's not in that space might only get one type of like education, which is that if you do this or you look like that, then you're acting gay. And if you're doing that, that's wrong. And so, if you got no one else to kind of, you know, challenge that mindset, especially when you're young, I think that's kind of where you then get this culture of pause, no homo.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, that for me is what I recognize within my own sub-community.
Yeah.
Quest, you was going to say something.
Likability politics. And the whole idea that growing up, where masculinity doesn't exist in a vacuum, femininity doesn't exist in a vacuum, and they are the result of social constructs, like redefined and adjusted social constructs, but they are social constructs. What that means is that the rules that govern them depend on what society or the society around you deems as acceptable, which is why you have people in countries where men holding hands is the norm. Like, you're not going to see that, and
even bat an eyelid.
The natives to those places are not going to see it and think anything, let alone think positive or negative. They're not going to think anything. But then you have places where, like you said, if you wear skinny jeans, because of the social network around those people in those places, you could be berated with questions because it's now in our society, according to our rules, that's not okay. And I think there's that element. So I think I might have to redact something I said earlier, in that I can't see how it could possibly not be that. Because I guess in the example of football or of sport, for example, the likelihood is that you've proved your value from your performance. So therefore, that microcosm of a society isn't dependent on the same behaviors as like outside, like regular society. So as a man or as a footballer or things like that, you've proved to some extent why, like, you've ticked off the boxes, so that these other behaviors are not necessarily the things that are going to inform whether you're going to be accepted in that society or not. So it's like you then have, in some sense, earned the freedom to not have to carry the burden of being expected to act in a certain way, and that meaning you're a man. Yeah. And I think that is an interesting point, because I think that is probably part of what drives that loyalty to the gender. Because if you feel like in those spaces you have the opportunity to win freedom from certain types of judgments or the feeling of being viewed in a certain way, you then, like, there's then the potential for you to double back and then be like, if being around men provides me this freedom, then I'm going to be loyal to men wherever men are. Right. Not fully understanding the subtext that's led you to that thought process. But I can see how these things start to connect. And then if women are not in those spaces, or you don't associate women with being granted that type of freedom, it then becomes a thing of, it polarizes itself in that this gender, in my experience, have been associated with me feeling free, and this one hasn't, so I'm going to associate freedom with this one and not associate freedom with this other one. Sure. And then eventually your behaviors start to split, and again, without fully understanding, because I feel if you fully understood what causes that kind of split in opinion, you would be more capable of pulling it back together and understanding that these situations happened, and women couldn't, like, when most of us were playing football, women weren't really going to be in the same team as us. So it's not that they are less. Yeah, it's not that they can't provide that freedom. The situations that have led to those thought process, women were excluded from being involved in them anyway. So
you have to be able to somehow be rational or reflective enough to kind of pull it back.
You have to be aware that there's something to be rational, reflect on. And
many of us aren't.
I have a question for the man them, and I think in particular we've been speaking here about, camaraderie, loyalty to our gender, loyalty, to our male friends, and so on and so forth. So, and as we're all guys here and we've all had interactions, obviously, with women. Relevant question: why is it that the energy that we put into our male friendships, why do we not, in general, tend to apply that same energy in our relationships on a platonic level with our female friends, as well as on a romantic level, to a degree, with, girlfriends, wives, and so on and so forth?
This doesn't apply to me. I treat everyone the same.
Word. That's me personally.
That's my answer. No, I think it's down to sort of culture and toxic masculinity. It teaches us to sort of have to have an unnatural sort of loyalty and love towards other men, but also teaches us to dislike, homophobia,
Homophobia, with and the love
homosexuals or homosexuality, which is odd. So I think when it comes to sort of, we've been raised for in that way for such a long time that when it comes to sort of having to sort of love another woman or treat her with that sort of same respect, we don't do it. I've been in an incident where I'm in a club or bar with a woman, and she comes up to me. She's like, "That guy just touched me." I'm like, "Are you sure? Did he?" I'm questioning her straight away. I go up to the guy. He's like, "No, I didn't. It's a packed place. I didn't do anything." Straight away, I've believed his story that he gave me. So I've left it. She's disappointed. She's angry. She's vexed. She's sitting down. Doesn't want to have, any more sort of interaction. She just wants to go home. I'm like, just relax, get a drink or whatever. Cool. So about an hour later, I go to the toilet by myself. I come out and I see this guy going up to another woman, stroking her from head to toe. It was so odd, just stroking her. And I got so angry that I believed a stranger. For no apparent reason, I just believed him. I went up to him, switched, security had to come, they threw him out. And I was apologizing, and I thought, how many incidents have happened in life where I've believed a man, friend or not, just because he's a man? And I feel like so many of us do that, especially even sort of just down to how, even with like rape culture, for example, a guy could be accused of doing something, and straight away we're talking about, the stats and how many women lie, when really and truly that shouldn't even be into question. We automatically go to his defense, or a lot of people jump to a man's defense, and then whereas when it comes to sort of like a woman, where we don't offer the same sort of leniency, to the point where a woman could just have consensual sex and we're judging her and critiquing her a lot more harsher than someone who's been accused of rape or sexual assault, which is crazy. But it all comes or stems from toxic masculinity, in my opinion anyway, and just learnt behaviour.
Anyone else want to throw an opinion on that?
I don't have much to offer. Like for me, similar to what Quest was saying, in my mind I just try and treat people fairly, try and treat people how I would like to be treated. I think that's easy, because sometimes equality isn't always good as well. I think there's a difference between equality and equity as well, and recognizing that people are different. So how I might need to treat a woman, it doesn't mean I'm not going to treat them fair, but I might need to treat them differently, recognizing certain situations of the individual. But generally speaking, yeah, I can't say this maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, but certainly in recent years, I've had a greater awareness of the impact that I can have on a woman or on different women, that because of my loyalty to my gender. And I think you raised a perfect example. Rape culture, even just like when you think about stuff like sexual assault, doesn't have to be rape for it to be wrong. You touching a woman without her permission, in any form, in any way, it's wrong in almost every case. But I've been in situations where I know that my friends have done that. I watch men do that in the club all the time growing up, men, hey, how you doing, miss? Stroking the arm, stroking the back, hey, how you doing, miss, whatever. And with some women, it's like, okay, they don't mind it. They wanted the attention. You got it now. But there were more women that didn't like it in the club.
Yeah, I think.
And when it doesn't work, the guy just moves on to the next one. You follow behind, and even if it's not someone that you see them do it to other women. And so when women are screaming, saying, "Listen, like men are taking the mick, like men literally mistreat us, or men, don't respect us or whatever." Again, sometimes you don't give them that grace. It's just like, it's either one or two things. It's just like men will be men. It's that same concept of boys will be boys. That means you're giving them a grace. You're giving them a pass.
You're giving them a leeway to do bullshit.
What they want. Yeah. Or you just refuse to see it for whatever reason, because of your loyalty. You just don't want to. You start thinking of stats. You start thinking, what did she wear that night? Maybe if you didn't look that certain way that night, maybe if you didn't kind of look as flirtatious as you did that night, maybe he wouldn't have done that. Well, how about if she doesn't want someone to touch her, you just don't touch her? you just leave her alone. Because if you went to a man at the bar and you just stroked his shoulder, he's gonna punch you in your face.
And that's probably the only time men would understand. Oh, sorry. That's the only time men will probably understand what it's like to be a woman, or when it's like when you don't want to be touched without your consent. When it's a man who is touching another man, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, now I understand it, which is again problematic within itself.
And another one, I tell you, and I'm guilty of this, or I have been guilty of this. Another, the other times when we kind of like notice or realize that, women are treated unfairly is, when we as men have our children, have daughters, and you hear many men say, oh, like I didn't realize like how much women go through, women deserve so much respect. Now my daughters made me realize that, whatever. And that must be a massive slap in the face to women, I've seen a woman like kind of respond to that kind of like tweet
Rhetoric,
or something and say, like water is wet.
Yeah, it's true.
You're expecting, you're praising the very bare minimum now, and and I'm guilty of that, of kind of seeing it as like, oh well, you know what? Now that I've got another lady in my house, I think I understand now. I'm gonna try better. Why didn't you try in the very beginning? Or why did it just take that? And some men do one step worse than that, and they only treat women around them with respect. I've seen men say that, no. They'll be like, all women are bitches. And someone will be like, but you got a mum, you got a sister. Yeah, no, they're all right. They're not bitches. Everyone else is bitches.
That's the only time there's no longer a loyalty towards your own gender as a man, when it's like your sister or your daughter or your mother. Then it's like, woof, well, she would never lie to me. But then it doesn't have to sort of be your mother or your sister. There doesn't have to be someone within that same sort of capacity or family capacity. It's straight away like, why are you always siding with a man that you don't even know?
Yeah, I think this will probably be the closing note on it, but I think a big part of it comes into, for one thing, a lot of guys have this really bad habit of using a woman's dress code to determine that as consent, or they try and use a woman's body language as a form of consent, and it's really not the same thing. Trust me. Listen, we've been in functions where if we see a nice girl and she's giving man the look, we're gonna know that, okay, she's giving me that energy. I can make that approach to kind of talk to her and so on and so forth. But even then, that still doesn't therefore give me the right to now start trying to caress her out of nowhere.
There's a study about that. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Keep forgetting.
This is why you're getting cooked today. This is why I'm gonna cook you today.
Now, there's a study about really sexist men. Which do you remember it? Yeah, go on, because I can't remember it properly.
So basically, there's a study about the area of the brain that perceives objects, and then there's a different area of the brain that perceives
people,
humans, things with emotions, with feelings, people. And they did a study on really sexist men, and they showed pictures of women just dressed like quote unquote normally, or in like formal or normal everyday dressing, and in the men's brain, the area that sees them as beings with emotions lit up, showing that they saw them as people. And then when they showed the same women dressing even slightly provocatively, that area that saw them as people reduced, and the area that sees them as objects increased. Which means for these men that were really sexist, when they saw women dressed even slightly provocatively, they no longer saw them as living beings with emotions and feelings. So
that phrase, that saying of you just see women as objects, is literally linked to the brain.
For some people, they are so that, I guess it's a neurosis. Like the neurons that have connected in their minds means that that's the pathway that is the most efficient. The pathway that sees women as objects is the most efficient. And that's why it lights up more. That's why that path is.
It's a good research. What is it for the listeners? Anyone that wants to? Because I
can't remember the name of the author off head, but maybe we could put it in caption somewhere.
Maybe we'll put that in the caption somewhere.
I'm gonna throw a random thing. Just say study on men that think women are objects in Google. And let's see what comes up that way, guys. That's personally what I'm gonna throw out there, because right now all of us are looking amongst each other like, oh, what was the study group and so on and so forth. So there's definitely that. But thank you to all of the bros today. Thank you so much all for listening in. Thank you, Manny, Goodman Quest, Goodman T, even though he came over an hour late. I'm cooking you. Yeah, I'm going to cook you on social media as well. Don't ever get it twisted. I've not forgotten you. I'm going to deal with you. But look, a big shout out to everyone. This is obviously essentially the start of season 2. We're back with a bang. We're here. We're active. Just to give a big shout out to everyone listening in. Big up to, of course, Goodman Malik once again on the P's and Q's with the camera and making us all look sexy as you do. Once again, guys, just to give all of you a lovely little free, please don't hesitate to follow all of us on social media. Goodman Daps.
Goodman Manny. Sorry, that's not my Twitter name. What am I talking about?
See?
Manny Owl.
The Questlove with an X, not a Q.
T_Kingbar.
So you've got it all here. Feel free to follow us. Please also make sure to follow Malik Beard, one of the greatest videographers that I know, obviously making us all look fly, and also feel free to holler him on other separate projects also. Please also, guys, don't hesitate to use our discount code GPOD1 for discounts on various products on the Goodman Factory website, goodmanfactory.com. Once again, guys, feel free to follow the Goodman Factory Podcast. We are on all forms of social media. Spotify, the podcast app. We're on YouTube, where, of course, all of the times that we record these, they're obviously recorded by Goodman Malik. As well, feel free to follow us on Instagram and on Twitter as well, at Goodman Factory. Once again, guys, we're signing off today. Love to be back in the studio. Season 2 has begun. Obviously, may this hopefully be the first and last time T comes over an hour late. I told you I'm cooking you, bro. Like, you don't stand a chance with me now. I'm on your ass. But look, big up. Yeah. Zoom it in where, so they can see the culprits. Come in there with your black Jack Sparrow looking ass. But look, big up to everyone once again, guys. It's a wrap from us. Deuces, peace. Have a great week, guys. Love.